Okay, this is a little bit of a commentary on this past Republican debate that happened this last Wednesday, the 21st of September. And anybody who's watched the debates is probably starting to form their opinion on how each candidate is going to attack the economic problem. And if you look at this past debate, for example, and what each of the candidates said about how they would fix the economy, Herman Cain, who won the straw poll, didn't seem to want to get to the core of the problem. He thought that a Federal Reserve was necessary, but that its role needed to be reduced. And that seems to be basically what all the candidates thought, except for Ron Paul, who's been saying that the Fed needs to be ended for a long time, and he wants to start with a full audit of the Federal Reserve. He implemented an audit in the past year or so, and that got a little bit watered down, but even that partial audit, I believe, revealed that the Federal Reserve spent $16 trillion in the last 2 or 3 years, I believe it was. And I don't think people were totally sure where that money went, if it went to bailouts to other central banks or something, or things like that. Getting back to the candidates, Bachmann, when asked what she would do about the economy, or she was asked specifically what she thought of Ben Bernanke in regards to what Rick Perry said, because Rick Perry said that Ben Bernanke was doing treasonous activities by printing up all this money while certain politics are going on. Bachmann said that if she became president, she wouldn't reappoint Bernanke. But she didn't really give an indication what she would do as far as the Federal Reserve. People like Ron Paul and Peter Schiff, those like-minded people, I think have indicated that, just getting rid of somebody on top that runs the Federal Reserve, it's not going to matter. It's a systemic problem. So if Bachmann, for instance, would get rid of Ben Bernanke, somebody else is just going to be put in his place, and the same policies are going to continue to go forward. So that's not going to help the economy either. That's not going to address what's really bringing down the economy, which are the activities of the central bank, the Federal Reserve. Romney said similar things about the Federal Reserve. He said we need a Federal Reserve to monitor the money supply and deal with the money supply. And he said he doesn't believe Congress has a responsibility to get involved there. But the problem is that even looking back on the Constitution, initially the Constitution did give Congress the responsibility to look after the money supply, monitor the money supply, coin money, and regulate the value thereof. So Congress was in charge initially with the issuance of money, and therefore the people in the United States didn't pay Congress. There wasn't a fee to issue money. We didn't pay Congress for that, and there shouldn't be a fee for that. That's one of the problems. But getting back to what Romney said, he likes it the way it is, where Congress is out of the equation, because as a matter of fact, Congress looks the other way. It was amazing that a partial audit even got through via Congress to reveal anything about the Federal Reserve, because basically the Congress looks the other way. So Romney's idea has already been in place. He doesn't want to attack the source of the problems either, which is the activities of the Federal Reserve. So all these candidates, including Perry and Gingrich, and the others who I've mentioned, they just want to reduce the Fed's role, and I believe they're all jumping on the bandwagon right now because it's politically helpful for them to get into office. I don't believe they're sincere in getting rid of the Fed, which is what Ron Paul has been saying all along. If you understand the Federal Reserve and what it does, then you understand why the Fed needs to be ended. And for that to happen, individuals such as you and me have to realize what this means to our daily lives. And if an individual like you and I doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know what a central bank does, doesn't know what the Federal Reserve does and what they're all about, we won't even then recognize that there's a problem that they're causing that trickles down to our daily life, to our standard of living. Anybody who's studied the Fed comes across with their conclusions just exactly what kind of creature the Federal Reserve is. And I say it that way because one good book to read it's a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it sources tons of other books and references that talk about what the Federal Reserve, the activities of the Federal Reserve and what effects that has on the economy. And people have to realize that the Federal Reserve, all they do is they look out for their own interests, as any company would. The problem is that the Federal Reserve is in partnership with the government, and they have been since the inception. If you go back and you look at the original 7 people who set up the Fed, you had a couple people that were politicians. I think there was a Assistant Secretary of State, and there was another politician, I'm forgetting, he was a representative, and the other 5 members were bankers. So right there, that represented the first group of bankers that were getting in partnership with the government. And you have to realize that these people fear competition. The bankers, like J.P. Morgan, and with the other bankers, they were initially in competition with one another, so there was competitiveness there. That's what fuels a free market. Unless you have that, you're not really going to have a free market. And the Federal Reserve, the idea was deceptive from the beginning. And this is the kind of thing that people have to realize, or they won't see it. They'll just see paper money, fiat money as being, hey, that's the way it is, this is the money we use, not realizing that one private institution, the Federal Reserve, from the Federal Reserve Act, was granted privileges by the government. Now we pay for money to be issued, and people don't realize that. Instead of the government issuing money, the government has handed that responsibility over to the Federal Reserve, who now issues money, and we all pay for that because the government's charged interest for the Fed printing up money. And you have to understand that the Federal Reserve is not federal. Like I said, it's private, and they don't have reserves. They may borrow money, but they don't have reserves saved up. That's the illusion and deceptiveness of just the name itself. So what they have is the power to issue money. They can print it up at will. They can expand the money supply by printing it up, or they can take money out of the money supply, so they can inflate and deflate. So none of these politicians are willing to attack the source of the problems of the economy. They're only willing to say they're going to attack the symptoms, and that's not going to cure the economic ills. You can't have stimulus packages and bailout packages as a tool to try to help get the economy back on its feet. Only individuals and individual activities and getting jobs are what fuels a free market economy. Once you have an agency such as the Federal Reserve controlling interest rates between or among banks, and therefore that trickles down to the banks and how they charge interest rates towards their customers. These things are all artificial, and none of these candidates except for Ron Paul have talked about fixing that, which is to get rid of the Fed, and in the beginning to have a full audit of the Fed. So this is what this means to the average person. If a company says that we have to use paper money, that right there is a strike against the economy, because there should be competition in money, and now there can't be, because only one institution is granted the privilege of issuing money. And if I'm the Federal Reserve and I print up money out of nothing and I give you money, if you're like a Goldman Sachs, I give you money like I give you an AIG. You're the first recipients of the money I print up out of nothing. What that means is that you get that money cheaply than everybody else. You can spend that money, and if you spend it on commodities for your company, you're going to be paying the market prices that haven't changed. What the market is right now, you'll pay, if you're buying cement or oil, say you pay $50 for your unit of oil or cement. When you spend that money, it goes into the economy, and other people, other companies that get that money, when they end up spending that money that's been pumped into the economy, they're going to pay higher prices, because by the time the money reaches them, the market prices for commodities like cement and oil and so forth, those will have changed, and those people who get the money on down the line, they're going to be paying higher prices for them. So this is what causes inflation. Inflation is not directly caused by companies raising prices. Companies raising prices is only a symptom of inflation. The central bank is what causes that inflation. Companies raising prices is only because of what the central bank did. So until people realize that in their daily lives that there's a problem with the money we all deal in, because it's issued, it comes from the Federal Reserve, and it essentially goes back to the Federal Reserve through the banks. The economy is not going to change, and you have to realize it doesn't matter Republican or Democrat. The bailouts and the stimulus packages came from both these administrations. It doesn't matter who's in there. The only person that's talked about ending this type of thing is Ron Paul. So call your representatives and ask them to audit the Federal Reserve. Ask them to co-sponsor House Resolution 459 to audit the Federal Reserve. That was started by Ron Paul, and his son Rand Paul in the Senate started Senate Bill 202 to audit the Federal Reserve in the Senate. Maybe this time it'll be a full audit, and it will reveal much more about the Federal Reserve, because the partial audit of H.R. 1207 revealed that the Federal Reserve spent $16 trillion in the last so many years. And nobody exactly, I don't think, knows where that money went. So call your representatives, go to auditthefed.com, plug in your zip code, and you'll see whether your representatives co-sponsored these bills or not. And if they haven't, call them up and ask them why they haven't, because until we have competition in money and the Federal Reserve and the IRS are ended, the economy is not going to change.